Okay, now so it's screen clear to all of you.
जी मैम.
Okay, this is co-relational research. We after doing quantitative introduction to quantitative and qualitative methodologies, research methodologies. This co-relational research I have chosen from quantitative research to do it completely so that you can understand the two nature of quantitative researches. This quantitative, this is a type of quantitative research, correlational research. And unmute कर दें प्लीज. अब आपने आपको म्यूट कर दो, आवाजें आ रही हैं, प्लीज म्यूट कर दो. Okay, so correlational research. This is what is correlational research. This is very like a simple type of a research. Correlational research is, and this is the type of non-experimental type of a research method in which researcher measures two variables, understands and assesses the statistical relationship between these variables with no influence from any extraneous variable or any other variable. It means that co-relational research, which is also called associational research, and it's a type of non-experimental research, or this is also called a descriptive type of a research in which researcher measures two variables. They can be more than two variables, but basically the relationship between two, it means that two different type of variables, the relationship is tried to sort out and understands. The researcher tries to understand and access the statistical relationship between these variables. Why? Because in quantitative research methodologies, you know that data is in the form of numbers. So statistical relationship between those two different set of scores on different variables is measured, and with no influence from any extraneous variables, means other variables which are not of the interest for the researcher, they are remain in control, they are not studied. What is the purpose or focus of correlational research? For example, when we say that correlational research is an associational research, the association or a relationship between two variables, two different variables is measured, then what is the purpose? Like why this research is done? What is the purpose of doing this type of a research? To determine the relationship, to make predictions. These are two main important purposes of correlational research. One, to determine the relationship between different variables, and second, to make predictions. Why? Because correlational researches can be of different types. Prediction studies are also one type of a correlational research. So when we want to determine the relationship between variables without giving focus to the cause and effect relationship, we conduct correlational research. And then we want to make the predictions about on the basis of knowledge about one variable. When we make to the predictions about other variables, it means that we are doing again correlational research. What is the wholesome purpose of correlational research? Now this over these lines, if you will look here, purpose for doing correlational research is to determine the degree to which a relationship exists between two more variables. Two are more than two variables. It means that when we get the scores in a form of data, we want to measure statistical relationship between the variables, and for the purpose of determining the degree to which a relationship exists, that to what degree the relationship exists. It means that relationships can be of different types. Within correlational research, there are three different types of relationships are described: their nature and their degree. It means that what is their nature and what is the degree. Now, if you look here, a correlational research design measures a relationship between two variables without the researcher controlling either of them. The researcher is not entrusted to control the variables, but the researcher when the researcher, for you to understand that when what type of a research would be correlational research, where you or a researcher, means if we are conducting the research, we as a researcher would not control any of the variable, either of the variable in the research, and it aims to find out whether there is either a positive relationship between the variables, there is a like negative relationship between the variables, or there is a zero correlation between the variables. Now what is the purpose, what was the purpose of correlational research? The purpose of correlational research was to determine the relationship between the variables and to make the predictions on the basis of knowledge about one variable to the other variable. But when we look here, what happens in correlational research? In correlational research, researcher, without controlling any of the variable, try to just find out that whether there is any type of a relationship between the variables. So what these type of relationships are? There are different type of the relationships that exist between variables. One of them is called positive correlation, the other is called negative correlation, and zero correlation. Now we are coming to the first, positive correlation between variables. What does this mean? What is the meaning of positive correlation between variables? Positive correlation means both variables change in the same direction. What does it mean? That both the scores of on the variables, both the data on the variables in the form of scores, in the form of numbers, they change in the same direction. Direction, it means if one is increasing, the scores on one variable, the data on one variable is increasing, the data on other variable is also increasing. Like look at here, if you can see here, positive correlation is described here. These dots are in fact the scores. These are the scores. This is what x-axis and y-axis, and we put the scores on x-axis and on y-axis. These are two variables. Like this is one variable and this is another variable, the independent variable and the dependent variable. Or we are not giving the names, we are just taking the variables as criterion and production variables. These are different type of the names of the variable which are used in research methodology, especially when we say productive variable and criterion variable, means we are talking about correlational researches. So positive, in positive correlation, what happens that if the score on one variable increases, the score on other variable also increases. Like look at here, if the height increases, weight also increases. Now what happens if what will happen if the score on height increases, the score on weight also increases. It means in direction of increasing, both is like scores on the variables are increasing. So this would be called positive correlation. But in what happens in negative correlation? Negative correlation, look here, the variables change in opposite direction. It means the scores on the variables, they change in opposite direction. Opposite means what will happen? If the scores on one variable will increase, the scores on the second direction the variable will decrease. This is what happens in negative correlation between the variables. What happens in this type of an association or a relationship? If the scores on one variable are increasing, the scores on other variable will decrease, and this would be called, what this would be called, negative correlation. Why? Because the variables or the scores on the variables, their direction is in opposite to one another. For example, this is an example which I have given to you right here. I have written here is coffee consumption increases, tiredness decreases. For example, consumption is increasing, coffee's consumption is increasing, we are increasing the consumption of coffee, and what happens as a result? Tiredness means on other variable, the tiredness, which is tiredness, that is decreasing. So when the variable on one variable is increasing, the change on the other variable, the scores are decreasing. This would be called negative correlation. In after negative correlation, the third correlation which occurs, or the third association, or the type of relationship between variables in correlational research, this is called zero correlation. Now, what do we mean by zero correlation? That there is no relationship between the variables. It means that the variables which the researcher has taken in the research for the purpose of finding out the association or the relationship between them, then after conducting the research, or through the process, in the process of the research, what happens that nothing occurs, means it means that there no type of a relationship happens. There is no relationship between the variables. Like for example, coffee consumption is not correlated with height. Height in coffee consumption is not related in any way. What does it mean? That the two variables which you are taking, they show that they are completely irrelevant. They don't have any type of an association or a relationship between them. So now within the correlational research, we try to statistically measure the relationship between different variables, and this statistical relationship is shown with a number that is called correlation coefficient. The relation can be negative and positive, but the strength of relationship, listen, the strength of the relationship, that can be different. That can be in the form of number, to show that whether the relationship is strong, the relationship is weak, or what. This is again the feature or the characteristic of a correlational research. Now what? First of all, what happens in correlational research? You want to find out if there is a relationship between two variables, but you do not expect to find a causal relationship between them. Means in correlational relationship, the whole purpose of a researcher is to find out the association or the relationship between two variables, but the purpose is not to find a cause and effect relationship between them. For example, we want to know if people who have higher incomes are more likely to be vegetarian. You don't think that income causes vegetarian, but finding a relationship would lead to a better understanding of the factors that influence or limit people's dietary choices. Okay, so what we do in correlational research? First, we want to know, to find out if there is a relationship between two variables, but we don't expect to find a cause and effect relationship between them as a researcher. Like for example, if we want to generate any kind of a theory or an explanation about the diet choices of people, and to like products from their dietary choices, that they would be more vegetarian because of having more higher incomes or not. We want just to see that higher incomes are related to the choices of people, food choices of people or not, dietary choices or not. So what we will do, we will just what will do, we will just look that is there a relationship between these two variables or not, like increase income and the choices of dietary choices of people's. There is no cause and an effect relationship. Only correlational research relationship is there. Now, what will happen in second choice of correlational research when we take this correlational research? In a second option, what happens when we think that there is a correlational relationship? There is no correlational relationship. There is a cause and effect relationship between variables, but it is impractical or unethical to conduct experimental researches. For example, sometimes what happens that due to the ethical standards or ethical responsibilities or obligations on the researchers, they cannot conduct like cause and effect relationship studies. We cannot conduct experimental researches. That's why we at that time try to conduct what correlational researches. First of all, when first option for conducting the correlational research was to find out the relation or association, and second is to do the researches on the purposes where conducting experimental researches becomes unethical. यानी पहले हम कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च को कंडक्ट करने के लिए हमारे पास दो ऑब्जेक्टिव्स होते हैं. हमारे पास दो वजूहात समझिए होते हैं कि हम कहाँ पे कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च जो है उसको कर सकते हैं. पहली तो ये वजह होती है कि जो कि कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च का खुद से पर्पस है. क्या पर्पस होता है कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च का? कि वो कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च में हम क्या करते हैं, हमें पता होता है कि जब हम एसोसिएशन और रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन वेरिएबल्स फाइंड आउट करें, और दूसरा क्या होता है कि हम उन वेरिएबल्स के बीच में कोरिलेशनल रिसर्चेस करते हैं जबकि हमें पता हो कि यहाँ पे एक्सपेरिमेंटल रिसर्च करना जो है वो इथिकल नहीं होता या वो इम्प्रैक्टिकल है, वो प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है. क्यों? इसलिए कि जाहिर है कभी कभार ऐसा होता है कि हमें काज एंड इफेक्ट रिलेशनशिप नजर आ रहे होते हैं या रिलेशनशिप हमें नजर आते हैं, लेकिन हम एक्सपेरिमेंटल रिसर्च नहीं कर सकते हैं. क्यों नहीं कर सकते? क्योंकि एक्सपेरिमेंटल रिसर्चेज में तो हमें मैनिपुलेशन करनी पड़ती है इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल की, हमें इंटरवेंशन इंट्रोड्यूस करवानी पड़ती है, हमें जो है वो दो कंट्रोल का पूरा प्रोसीजर इंट्रोड्यूस करवाना पड़ता है. मैंने आपको करवाया है जो क्वांटिटेटिव रिसर्चेज में कोरिलेशनल डिजाइन. तो यहाँ पे वो सारी चीजें नहीं कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं ये देखना चाहूँ कि पैसिव स्मोकिंग का जो है वो किस तरह से बच्चों में एस्थमा को प्रोड्यूस करती है, यानी फॉर एग्जांपल पैसिव स्मोकिंग के वो खुद स्मोकर्स नहीं है बच्चे, लेकिन पैसिव स्मोकर के आप वहाँ पे इस तरह से एनवायरमेंट में है जहाँ पे कि ये स्मोकिंग हो रही है, वो आप पे इन्फ्लुएंस करती है. अब हम क्या करेंगे? क्या हम एक्सपेरिमेंट यहाँ पे कंडक्ट कर सकते हैं कि बच्चों को इस वो जो है वो स्मोक करवाएं, या फिर इस तरह के जो है हम अपने सब्जेक्ट्स को इस तरह के एनवायरमेंट में शामिल कराएं या दाखिल कर दें जहाँ पे कि ये स्मोकिंग हो रही है? तो ये अनइथिकल होगा. ठीक है, हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा? हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा? हमें ये करना पड़ेगा कि हम सिर्फ वहां जाएंगे. अब आप इस एग्जांपल को सुनिएगा. वी हाइपोथेसाइज दैट पैसिव स्मोकिंग causes asthma in children. You cannot do an experiment to test the hypothesis. It would be unethical to deliberately expose some children to passive smoking. But what can we do as a researcher? We can do a correlational study to find out if children whose parents smoke are more likely to have asthma than children whose parents do not smoke. Like we will compare the two group of subjects. Like we will include the parents who are smokers and will include the parents who are not smoker, and we will compare their children also, that whether they are some differences or not. So these are the conditions where correlational researches are applied or where correlational researches are taken in consideration. Okay, and now how to do correlational researches? It means that what are different methods of doing correlational researches? There are many different methods you can use in correlational researches to test your hypothesis and for the analysis of quantitative data. The most common data collection methods for this type of a research includes surveys, observations, and secondary data. This is also called archival records. Like what type of methods would be used for doing correlational researches? We will use the method of surveys, we will use the method of observations, and we will do make the use of secondary data or archival data. Now what these surveys are in fact दे आर द रिसर्चर सर्वेज इट सेल्फ रिसर्चेज कहलाई जाती है लेकिन सर्वेज जो है ये एक मेथड ऑफ रिसर्च भी है जिसको कि हम यूज करते हैं किसके लिए एक मेथड हम यूज करते हैं कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च को करने के लिए सिंपल वे जो है टू सर्च द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन वेरिएबल्स इज थ्रू सर्वेज सर्वे लॉन्ग जो है एक बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे समझिए की जाने वाली एक रिसर्च होती है जिसको किया जाता है फॉर एग्जांपल वेरिएबल्स के बीच में हम रिलेशनशिप देखना चाह रहे हैं उसके लिए हम सर्वे कर रहे हैं सर्वेज में हम क्वेश्चनेयर्स यूज करते हैं हम कंडक्ट कर सकते हैं सर्वेज को कौन से लाइक उसके साथ मीडियम्स से या किस तरह से कर सकते हैं हम उसे ऑनलाइन कर सकते हैं हम उसे ईमेल के थ्रू कर सकते हैं हम फोन के थ्रू कर सकते हैं या हम इन पर्सन जो है वो क्वेश्चनेयर्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करते हैं और उनके ऊपर जो है हम आंसर्स लेते हैं जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं उनसे so you can ask the respondents questions related to the variables you are interested in and then statistically analyze the responses for example if as a teacher of psychology I want to measure the relationship between this new teaching style of online teaching and students mental health then what would happen between them I will just send you a questionnaire online by sending it through email or on a phone or we can come to you and give you those questionnaires so आप उसमें क्या करेंगे अपने responses put करेंगे तो उन responses जो है वो obviously numbers में होते हैं और उन numbers को हम statistical analysis के procedure से गुजारेंगे और हमारे पास जो है responses आएंगे और हमें पता चलेगा ये जो दो वेरिएबल्स मैंने इंक्लूड किए हैं एक मैंने ऑनलाइन टीचिंग का लिया है दूसरा मैंने मेंटल हेल्थ का लिया है तो या ऑनलाइन टीचिंग और स्ट्रेस का हम ले सकते हैं तो ये वेरिएबल्स जो है हम इसको रिलेट कर सकते हैं आपस में ठीक है तो ये किस तरह से हो जाएगा ये थ्रू सर्वे के हो जाएगा क्योंकि सर्वे में लॉन्ग स्केल मतलब ये बहुत बड़े लार्ज स्केल के ऊपर की जाएगी कि एक सैंपल हम एक लेंगे अच्छा और उसके ऊपर हम जो है वो क्वेश्चनेयर्स के थ्रू जो हम क्वेश्चनेयर्स यूज करते हैं अपने वेरिएबल्स के ऊपर बने हुए होंगे अपने टॉपिक के ऊपर उनके ऊपर हमने डेटा लेना है The second one is naturalistic observation. Now this is the second type of doing correlational research. This observation takes place in the field. That's why this is also called field research or naturalistic observation, where researcher gather data about the behavior or the phenomena in its natural environment without intervening. रिसर्चर जो है वो इंटरवेन नहीं करेगा यहाँ पे सिर्फ ऑब्जर्व करना होता है नेचुरलिस्टिक वाला जिसमें कि आपने उसको चेंज नहीं किया हो इंटरवेन नहीं किया हो उसको कहा जाता है नेचुरलिस्टिक ऑब्जर्वेशन नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस इन नेचुरलिस्टिक ऑब्जर्वेशन The method of naturalistic observation involve record करेंगे, counting, describing and categorizing actions and events. What happens here? That the behavior is recorded, then the behavior is counting, describing and categorizing. Why? Because all these things happens in क्वांटिटेटिव रिसर्चेस में कैटेगराइजेशन होती है हम उसको कैटेगराइज डेटा को करेंगे काउंटिंग कैटेगराइजिंग डिस्क्राइबिंग इवेंट्स को नेचुरलिस्टिक ऑब्जर्वेशन कैन इंक्लूड बोथ क्वालिटेटिव एंड क्वांटिटेटिव एलिमेंट्स ये एक चीज याद रखिएगा कि ऑब्जर्वेशंस का मेथड जो है वो स्ट्रॉन्ग and oftenly used method of research है qualitative research के लिए लेकिन this is also used in quantitative researches तो जब quantitative में हम यूज करेंगे तो आप ये देखिए यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है कि naturalistic observation can include both qualitative and quantitative elements but to find correlation you focus on data that can be analyzed quantitatively लेकिन quantitative researches में जब हम correlational research में हम यूज करते हैं ना और naturalistic observation को तो फिर हम फोकस डेटा के ऊपर करते हैं, उसको किस तरह से क्वांटिटेटिवली हम एनालाइज करेंगे, फ्रीक्वेंसीज के फॉर्म में, ड्यूरेशंस के फॉर्म में, स्केल्स के फॉर्म में, अमाउंट्स के फॉर्म में, क्वांटम्स के फॉर्म में हमारे पास ये डेटा होगा. And the last one was secondary data or archival data. Archival data और secondary data I have introduced to you in the types of data कि ये किस तरह से primary और secondary और tertiary मैंने आपको बताया था. तो इसमें क्या होता है, instead of collecting original data हम क्या करते हैं, वो data use करते हैं जो कि already मौजूद होता है. ठीक है, जिसके सोर्सेज कोई इंटरनल सोर्सेज हो सकते हैं, ओपन एक्सेस सोर्सेज हो सकते हैं, पब्लिश सोर्सेज होते हैं, सिंडिकेटेड सोर्सेज हमारे पास होते हैं. उसमें क्या होता है, इंस्टेड ऑफ कलेक्टिंग ओरिजिनल डेटा, रिसर्चर कैन आल्सो यूज डेटा that had already been collected for a different purpose such as official records or polls or previous studies. तो हमारे पास कभी कभार ऐसा होता है कि डेटा पहले से ही मौजूद होता है हमारे पास, लेकिन हम क्या करते हैं, उसको अपनी स्टडी के लिए यूज कर लेते हैं, कोरिलेशनल रिसर्चेस के लिए. तो दैट कैन बी हेल्पफुल, वो फिर हमारे लिए बहुत हेल्पफुल होता है कि हम उसको अंडरस्टैंड करें. कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च में जो इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है, ये उसका इंट्रोडक्शन है, समझ लीजिए कि दिस इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च. लेकिन इस कोरिलेशनल रिसर्च में जो कोरिलेशंस बनते हैं, कोरिलेशन कोएफिशिएंट्स जो बनते हैं, वो नंबर जो ये बता रहे होते हैं कि किस डिग्री तक जो है ये कोरिलेशन आपस में मिला हुआ होता है. एक तो पॉजिटिव, नेगेटिव और जीरो कोरिलेशन है ना, दिस इज द नेचर ऑफ कोरिलेशन के वो क्या होगा. लेकिन एक होता है